Hey, hi all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Nous Infosystems welcomes you all to this webinar on DevOps, addressing cultural and infrastructure transformation challenges. So the presenters for today's webinar will be Uttam Ramamurthy. He is the practice head for DevOps at Nous, and myself, Ranjit Shankar. I'm the client solutions manager. Moving on, a few quick ground rules for this webinar. So we request the audience to type in their questions directly into the question panel of GoToWebinar. The audience will be kept on mute during the webinar. We will be taking questions from the audience towards the end of the webinar, and the webinar recording and deck will be shared after the webinar. So without further ado, to take you through the rest of the webinar, I am handing it over to my colleague Uttam Ramamurthy. Uttam, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ranjit. So hello all and welcome to this webinar. So today we will be quickly talking about what is the state of DevOps today. Let's look at DevOps challenges and how we can work with those challenges to bring in cultural transformation, infrastructure transformation, and also look at the latest trends and a quick brief introduction about Nous. So having said that, let me just start with it. So let's see what is the state of DevOps today, right? So this is just a survey of how DevOps has been catching up with everybody, right? So if you look at the data which we had at about DevOps in 2011, it was around 50% of the organization had started implementing that. But today, 63% of them are using DevOps. And when I say 63%, they are using DevOps at different levels and different projects within their organization. So that's nearly 26% increase in the DevOps adoption rate. That's quite a big number which we are talking about right now. So having said that, right, so why are the people getting into DevOps, right? So what's the real differentiator which we are talking about? So this is just a few stats of how DevOps has really helped enterprises once they have started implementing DevOps in their organizations. It has brought in agility wherein they are now having more frequent deployments with shorter lead times. It's added greater efficiency into the way they do their work so that there is less time spent on the unplanned work and rework. This is a big saving which the organization has started to see right now. We have looked a big jump in the customer satisfaction wherein the people are more happier with the kind of products they are getting at the rate at which they are getting over there. It has also added to the stability wherein we are looking at a faster recovery times for failures with the option of rollbacks integrated into it, and also greater security being coming into the implementation and deployment of the products, where we are seeing that 50% less time is taken to remediate the security issues which are being raised. And definitely the quality, right? So we are seeing 3 times lesser change failure rate which you are seeing in the organization. So these are the statistics which we are seeing with the organization who have started implementing DevOps at different levels within their organization. It's quite a huge advantage which these kind of organizations are getting by adopting DevOps. So it's very normal, right? So people have started jumping and adopting DevOps within their organization to get these kind of advantages within their organization. And it becomes very imperative, right? So we need to understand, so when we start implementing DevOps within the organization, what are we trying to do, right? It's a very important question which we need to ask before we start implementing DevOps within the organization. So with DevOps, we are bringing in new skills, we are bringing in new tools, we are bringing in new processes, and virtually trying to automate everything, right? So these are the kinds of changes which we are trying to bring within the organization. And there you go. So once you start making changes, right, within your organization, the first thing what you see from people is resistance, right? People are scared of change. They want to understand better, like what is this going to cause? They're going to have a lot of questions, right? So there's going to be big challenges when we try to make big changes within the organization. So change is not bad, but it is just that we need to be well planned as to how we are going to bring this change, right? So we need to understand that once we start implementing DevOps, that challenges are going to be there. Each organization is different, and each organization is going to have different challenges implementing DevOps within their organization. So that's the main theme about today's, wherein we want to talk about what are the challenges which organizations face and how they can try to solve it. What are the best practices they can try to embed within their organization so that they can bypass these challenges and start to successfully implement DevOps within their organization. So let's look at few of the challenges which normally the organization face, right? So we'll start with the cultural challenges. So one of the very common challenges is the organizational complexity, right? Each organization has a different way of doing. Each organization has different departments and different processes which they follow. And streamlining all these organization, all these teams together into one process or the best practice which we need to come up with is always a big challenge, and we need to look at how we can try to uh, solve this particular problem. The second challenge which we normally look at is the roles and the responsibility, right? I'm pretty sure, right, you would have heard these kind of statements by people saying that a developer just writes the code and says that he is not responsible for how it gets deployed in the production, right? It's not my job. These are the kinds of statements we get to hear. So we have operations people who are saying that, no, you can't bring in these many changes because I have a process in place which needs to be followed. So each people have a defined role and responsibility, but it is not defined towards a common business goal. So then people have to work towards one common business goal. It becomes a big challenge when we have a siloed kind of a organization. So the next big concern is the security and the compliance, right? So everybody is scared, right? So with DevOps, we are talking about increasing the speed of deployment, right? So if we are going to start deploying things at a fast pace, security and compliance will raise all red flags at all different areas, because they have to make sure that with the speed at which we are developing, we also need to take care of the security and the compliance need which has been defined by the organization. So that's one of a very big challenge which we need to look at. The next thing is the trust, right? So because with DevOps, we are bringing the concepts wherein we are saying that you do your job and you take care of the feature, you need to trust the other people that they are going to do their job and they are going to work in sync towards what has been planned for it. So a trust plays a very, very important role with this, with implementing DevOps, and most of the organization lack that, and that becomes a big challenge. The next challenge is the skill set, right? So when people don't have the right skills which are needed to implement it, so if they are working on a legacy product for a decade and we talk about the new skills which are coming in to make these changes or DevOps implementation, that definitely become a big challenge for them. The next one is the empowerment, right? So people are not empowered to go ahead with these kind of changes. There are always change agents within the organization. It is just that they need to be empowered. So without empowerment, it's very difficult to bring in these kind of changes which you are looking at. Budget constraints. Yeah, if we don't have the buy-in from the management, it is a big, big challenge that we can get the kind of investment and dedication which is needed to successfully implement DevOps within the organization. Lastly, but not the least, right, people have to understand the business impact, right? So today we are talking about disruptors. There are disruptors in each area, each technology, and each process, right? So if we are not understanding the way the new organizations are going towards, the new competitors they are coming up, it will really become a big challenge to sustain in this particular industry. So we talked about cultural challenges. So let's look at few of the infrastructure challenges, right? So infrastructure mostly is manual and repetitive, which is a big challenge when we suddenly, let's say an organization suddenly expands big, right? So they want to go and have multiple servers. They want to have the application instance spread across the regions, right? And if you're doing the things in a manual way, it becomes very difficult for us to expand at the pace the business wants us to grow. Change is not tracked. So we are talking about how do we track the changes, right? Things evolve. We need to understand what changed from the last version. We need to understand who changed the version. So currently, if we are doing all these activities in a manual way, it is very difficult for us to track these changes. Configuration value is not externalized, right? So we need to have a way in which we can configure things in a centralized way, wherein we can expand easily and have the things which are needed in a configurable way. Infrastructure currently is not tested, which is a very, very big drawback. We need to understand that infrastructure is the key for the security, compliance, and even the health of the products which we are trying to push across to our customers. So having testability is a very, very big requirement, and it's a challenge currently. It's not easily accessible for the developer, right? That's the silos which we are talking about. The developer doesn't look at what the operations teams are doing or doesn't have access to the production environment, and he says that it's not my responsibility, right? So we need to bring in, this is a big challenge wherein we need to have common visibility across the application, and everybody should work on the goal and responsibilities which are set for them. Difficult to automate, right? Because currently most of the organizations are not using the right tools, or they don't have a defined process wherein they can try to automate the things in a faster way. People have legacy applications which run on legacy infrastructure which is no more supported, and to bring in the automation into it, it's a big challenge, right? So these are the kinds of challenges which we are facing currently. This is a Forrester report which just goes about with the kind of data which I'm talking. This is just to say that what were the top challenges which they saw in the infrastructure area over there, where they're talking about lack of collaboration, lack of common skill, too many errors, no ability to test. These are the same things which I just said, but I wanted to put some stats on what the organizations are going through. So having talked about the challenges, right? So we need to find a solution for it, right? So we need to bring in a cultural transformation. We need to bring in a DevOps transformation within your organization. So to start today in this particular webinar, we will be concentrating on two areas, that is the cultural and the infrastructure part of it. So I'm going to start with how we can plan and how we can try to bring in a DevOps cultural transformation. So to bring in a transformation, change is needed, right? So change is good. This is again something, a mantra kind of a thing which we need to start preaching everybody. Change is good. So we need to repeat that, and we need to embed that into our team so that people start to change. So how do we make these changes, right? We need to bring these changes within the cultural part, the organizational part, and the process part. So all these things need to be implemented so that we can try to bring the transformation which we are talking about in DevOps. So we'll start with the cultural changes. What is the cultural changes we are talking about, right? So it's very important that we understand that DevOps starts with people. Culture is a very important and an integral part of how we are going to succeed implementing DevOps, right? So what are the features within DevOps that we are going to bring into this culture? We are going to bring in the concept of trust. We are going to say that you need to trust the team with which you are working so that you can better collaborate, you can better communicate, you can be honest in how you are going to communicate with the people. And again, the same thing which I talked earlier, change is good, right? I keep repeating this because this is the most important thing which we need to start talking and embedding within our teams. So the other things is there are a lot of tools which are going to help us with this particular implementation, right? So there are cases wherein people don't have the skill set. We help them, we train them, and maybe there are tools which is going to help them in embedding that part of it in an easier way. So we are going to encourage, we are going to empower them with the tools so that they can try to start seeing the advantage of what they're trying to implement. That we need to have transparency, right? It's very important that the business goals, the challenges, the SLAs, the KRAs, everything is pretty transparent, and it is shared across the team so that everybody works towards the business goal. So DevOps is driven by business, right? So DevOps talks about how you convert an idea into a product or a service in the best possible way, or the fastest way in which you can do it. And again, let me talk about this, right? So there's one aspect of the culture which is normally missing in most of the organization which I'm dealing with right now: rewarding the good behavior, incentivizing the people, right? So this is one of the biggest thing which is missing currently in most of the organizations. Many people feel that they're not motivated, they're not getting the recognition to the kind of work they're doing. They're trying to bring the change, but it is not recognized. So that is something which we need to concentrate so that we can try to bring the DevOps culture within the organization. When I talked about giving a lot of freedom to the developer, when I say developer, it is anybody who is working towards a business goal. It is very imperative that we also add accountability to that particular person, right? So each person is accountable to the role and responsibility which has been assigned to them. So for example, if a developer is developing a feature, he is accountable for that particular feature to be hosted in the production and also support of the production once the feature is live. So that is very, very important, that with flexibility, with a lot of transparency, with a lot of empowerment, you also need to have the accountability wherein we can track the progress which is being done there. And the last things which I want to bring in is, let's bring in a culture wherein we don't blame people. We try to learn from our failures. We'll try to empower the people. We'll try to teach the people as to what are the best ways in which they can do it, how they can avoid the things which they have done, and embrace failure. Failure is going to happen, right? It is always better to fail early, learn from it, and then make a good product out of it. So those are the very important things from a DevOps cultural point of view, which we need to start embedding within the organization, within our projects, within our teams. So one of the other major things is a cross-functional team. This is again how we break the silos, right? So we need to start developing cross-functional teams within our organization. So when I talk about the features of how we are going to embed the DevOps culture, right? So we need to have a team which has the visibility of the complete product life cycle. It has to understand why we are trying to implement this product. It has to understand the business. So we need to get all the people who are involved in this particular business goal together, and we need to have the cross training happening wherein a developer understands that this is how we are going to integrate, this is how we are going to deploy, so that he can work on that particular area and make sure that the kind of code which he is developing can be smoothly automated across with the integration and deployment aspect of it. Similarly, an operator needs to understand what kind of business features are being developed and empower the operator to start writing code, right? So we have the concept of infrastructure as a code, wherein an operator takes control of the infrastructure as a code, wherein he starts coding it and then evolves the infrastructure out of it. So there's quite a lot of advantages of how we are going to go with it. So in this way, we are developing an autonomous team with shared responsibilities. That's a great place to be in. So if you have a good cross-functional team within your organization, then you have a very good start for the DevOps culture, and the success rates is pretty high. So once we have embedded all these things, right, so that is when we start seeing the DevOps culture seen within the organization. So the people start to talk about these things like, okay, what is lean? What is continuous integration? What is agile? What is Scrum? What is design for failure? How do I use a Kanban? What is continuous integration? How do I automate the things? What is test-driven development? What is so behavior-driven development? So this is the kind of culture which comes out when we set up an environment for the people with the concept which I talk about. So that is how we need to start bringing a DevOps culture within an organization. So the next thing is the organizational changes which is needed, right? So from an operating model, right, we need to keep the things simple, right? There should be a simple structure with accountability which is set to it. I talked about the challenge, which if you have a complex organizational structure, it leads to a lot more complexity, a lot more silos, delayed in decision making, and that definitely affects the product life cycle which we are talking about. We need to enable full stack product ownership. This is again the concept of cross-functional teams. This is the concept of taking the responsibility within the organization and a responsibility of the features which you're trying to develop. We need to start standardizing the services which we provide across the organization. We need to establish practice areas. So organization should have its own DevOps COE, wherein they become the leaders, then they start embedding the culture within different projects in the organization. from a delivery model, right, we need to start focusing on the product in the sense the business, wherein everybody is focused on what is our business, what are the products we are delivering to it. That's the kind of mindset which we need to start evolving. We need to drive a end-to-end accountability. It's again, I'm stressing on this point again and again because it's a very, very important thing wherein people start to take accountability into their stride. We need to start adapting Scrum framework with concept of Agile and Lean into the delivery model, which really brings in the IT agility and also the business agility into this whole process. So once we have the operation and the delivery model, we need to start looking into the future with the modernization strategy. We need to start looking at how we are going to develop loosely coupled architecture into the applications which we are trying to develop. How do we bring in an API implementation wherein we have a service-oriented architecture or microservices into the way we are going to deliver business? Let's think differently. We need to be cloud ready, we need to be cloud native, right? Cloud native is the best way to be in, wherein we can have web scaled applications integrated into it. We need to have the self-service integrated into it, wherein the products which are going to evolve with IoT, with automation, with robotics should be self-sufficient and should be smart enough to understand what's happening within the process. And if they see a crisis or if they see a scenario, then they should be able to auto fix the things for it. That's the kind of modernization strategy which we need to start looking into it. So now let's talk about the process changes. So what kind of process changes are we going to get into it? So Agile is the backbone of DevOps implementation. So Agile is the stepping stone, it is a backbone, it is a very, very integral part of how we are going to start bringing the IT agility, right? So it's very important that we actually understand all the ceremonies of the Agile or the Scrum process and we follow it rigorously, right? People come up with a concept saying that we are following hybrid Scrum. I have no idea what that means. So we have one well-defined process and we need to stick to it. I understand that each project is different, each organization has a way for it, but it is very important that we understand why this particular process has been done. What are the advantages we are going to get from it? Then make customization to it. I can definitely understand small customization needs to be done because every organization works in a different way and they have different challenges. But we need to follow all the ceremonies and we need to follow it in the right way. So once we have the IT agility, it's very imperative that we need to bring in the continuous release process with automation. So what we are doing is we are talking about how we are going to integrate. We need to bring in the continuous integration, continuous deployment into this whole process wherein we have the source code. Once it is checked in, we have the quality audits done to it, we have the integration tests done into it, then we have the option of promoting it into various environments like different organizations follow different promotion models wherein they move to the QA, then to the staging, or some people call it as a user acceptance phase, and then have the deployment lifecycle defined wherein they can have the deployment done successfully on the target environment. The target environment right now is changing on a drastic way, right? So you need a single application which needs to be running on a website, need to be running in mobile, it need to be in the cloud. So there's different deployment strategies which we need to look at based on the different targets or the business needs which is going to come out of this particular process. And testing is a very, very important part of all these things, right? So we need to bring in a continuous testing into this process. And when I talk about testing services, it's very important that we start with three major parts of it. First is the unit testing. Then we look at with the test-driven development aspect of it and behavior-driven testing aspects into it. So these two are the very, very core things. And I'm pretty sure in most of the organizations which I talk to, they say that are we actually seeing the advantage by implementing TDD, right? It is something which needs dedication. It needs the skill sets for the people to do it, and it needs test-driven development needs to be embedded into the team, right? It should become a culture. And many people face a challenge wherein they start with it and they say that, no, I need to finish this code by end of tomorrow. I don't have time to do it. So it is very, very important that people also understand that we are not integrating TDD into a process just for this current build, right? So this TDD approach is going to help us with the integration testing. It is going to help us with the smoke testing. It is going to help us defining the quality of the product which we are trying to push across into the live environment. It is very, very important that we are not short-sighted and we start looking into the bigger advantages or the business goals which we are trying to get with that. Having said that, there is other things which we need to look at, right? We need to start looking at the regression testing. We need to start looking at the user acceptance testing. There are other important aspects like I think most of the organizations which I've talked with, they say that, okay, we will do the performance and load testing when it is needed. I totally disagree with that. Performance and load testing need to be brought into the regular deployment pipeline, wherein we actually do the testing and identify the issues before it actually happens, not after it has occurred and we start to fix the issue by finding out, okay, where it happened, why it happened, what it happened. So performance and load testing is also very important that we bring it into the continuous deployment lifecycle so that it is followed rigorously with all the releases which we are trying to do. Okay, so I think I touched with a lot of cultural changes which we can bring within an organization to implement DevOps. So I just want to take you through one of the success stories which we had with one of our clients. So, okay, this is a very nice part. So, well, I was called in for one of the organizations, so which was a very, very large organization in the insurance sector, and they have maybe 20-30 products which is running for them, and they have legacy products which are running for nearly a decade, right? So that is how it has been. So they came and said that, okay, let's implement DevOps. So when people come to us and say that, okay, let's implement DevOps, the first thing we say that we need to assess your current maturity levels, right? Without knowing that, we can't help you with that. We need to understand where you are at currently so that we can start defining what are the ways in which you can actually start successfully implementing DevOps. So when I went there and when we started working with them, right, so we saw that they work in complete silos, right? All the departments work in their own nutshell. So it was like a crazy thing which was happening, that they were able to do a release just once in a quarter. That was the kind of release life cycles they were having. So it is so they just started saying like, okay, let's start automating things, right? We can't do that. So we need to bring automation at a different stage, because if a release manager brings in a tool which the developer doesn't understand how it has to be embedded, then there's no point talking about it, right? So we did the assessment and we identified what are the gaps which were there in that particular organization, which really gave us a roadmap as to how we can tackle this, right? We need a roadmap to be planned so that we can successfully implement DevOps culture or DevOps implementation within the organization. So one of the very important things and a very good thing which we saw within the organization was not everybody was adhere to change, right? There were people who are actually wanting to change because they were doing the same laborious job in a manual way again and again. So they were just waiting for somebody to come in and get them started with this, right? So we saw that in quite a lot of departments within that organization. So what we said is we will start with change agents, right? We identify those change agents. We call them as the DevOps champions in each area, wherein we identified them and we started empowering them. So we started telling them, okay, so you have a problem, right? So let's talk about the problem. So this problem needs solution in 3 areas. We need to change the process, we need to change the tools which you are using, we need to bring in the new skills which are needed to work with these things. So that is the main DevOps culture. So once we identified the change agents, we brought in these changes into all these 3 areas, we started seeing tremendous progress, right? And this turned into a competition kind of a thing, wherein there was one team which was able to start delivering within 2 days. So that really opened up the eyes across the organization, wherein people started to talk like, what's happening? How are you guys able to do it? So that led into a grassroots kind of a evolution, wherein the changes which we are talking about in one project spread to multiple projects. So people started looking at what are the process changes we are doing, what are the tools changes we are doing. So that gave a very big interest to what we are doing and how we are trying to implement it. So once we had a grassroots kind of a engagement, right? So management was able to easily see that, right? So if you go initially to a management and say that, okay, we are going to change your process, we are going to bring in 4 new tools, nobody's going to go with you, right? It's something which you need to go with examples, right? So with this kind of implementation, wherein we are identifying the change agents, bringing in the grassroots thing, management was able to easily see the advantages which was coming from the DevOps. So we got the top-down buy-in with the management even without selling anything. The only thing we had to do was share the reports. And how did we do that? We did a centralized dashboard, brought in at the program level. We brought in all the projects under the program and started showing progress. Simple, right? So that's how we started getting into it. Once we had got the management buy-in, it was very easy for us by setting up a DevOps COE within that particular organization, and that COE helping the organization to scale across. So we were able to bring in the DevOps concepts within the whole organization. And let me tell you very clearly that it did take us nearly a year's time to bring in, but this was a successful implementation in the way we were able to do this. And let me just summarize like what were the main things in how we were able to successfully implement it. We need to educate the people on why we are bringing this change. It's always good that we tell them that, okay, you have a problem, this is the solution, these are the benefits you're going to get out of it. So that was the approach which we took with this organization. That really helped us. Once we talked about a solution, right, it's very important that we train the people to the level of what is needed to actually start implementing it. This is something that the organization needs to spend their monies on, wherein they have to train the people so that they are reskilled and they are skilled to the right skill set what is needed. Once you are trained, you need to empower them by trusting them so that they all work towards a single organizational goal. And last but not the least, you need to incentivize it, wherein you have the KRAs or the SLAs which are linked directly to their incentives so that they are motivated and start implementing it. So this is how we actually brought in a DevOps cultural change within one of the organizations with which we worked with. This is just to summarize that benefits of what we did there. So the POC kind of implementation which we started changed into a grassroots movement, and the grassroots movement brought in the management buy-in. This led to a great improved speed to the market. We were able to actually release virtually every other week. So we had a 2-week sprint and each sprint was deliverable. And it also improved the quality of the deliverables, and I think it was 1.6 times the customer satisfaction rates which we were able to achieve within that 1 year of DevOps implementation which we had there. So we talked about the cultural transformation. So let's talk about infrastructure transformation also coming into this. So this is how the operations is evolving, right? So earlier we used to have a monolithic kind of a implementation with most of the things being done manual, right? So now if you look at it, we are at a highly scaled operations, wherein we are bringing in the concepts of automation, we are bringing in IoT, we are bringing in robotics, cloud is virtually there everywhere, right? So there is a big change in the way we are evolving, that operations is going on right now. And since change is happening, there has to be industry leaders for it, right? There has to be new technologies which are evolving. So this is just to summarize, like, what are the areas in which the infrastructure landscape is evolving and who are the leaders within that. Definitely from a cloud platform point of view, AWS, Azure, Google, they're really the big guys who are changing the way we are delivering the products, right? From a process point of view, DevOps is growing everywhere, virtually into everything, by bringing in concepts like continuous integration, continuous delivery. And we are also moving into the concepts of, we are moving into microservices from monolithic kind of implementation, and containerization is blowing up everybody, right? So even a product-based company is totally changing their strategy as to how they can containerize their product and scale it to the business needs what they're looking at. That's the kind of IT infrastructure landscape changes we are looking at currently. So having said that, right, how do we bring in a transformation? The big part of this transformation has been the infrastructure as a code. So what is this infrastructure as code, right? So we are trying to create a reusable, maintainable, extensible, and a testable infrastructure, right? So with this, what are the kind of advantages we are getting with? So we are getting a continuous integration and delivery process embedded, wherein it's not just the software which is continuously delivered, it's also the infrastructure which is continuously developed with less or minimalistic manual intervention which is needed for it. We are now able to develop a modularized building blocks of infrastructure. Quality is getting embedded into the infrastructure directly, in the sense that when we are developing the code, we are developing checks within that particular implementation so that we are confident of the kind of infrastructure which we are provisioning. Version control changes. This really helps us in tracking the changes, tracking the users who are making these changes, and makes our life a lot more easier with the audits and the compliance issues. We have a shared module across teams. This is wherein we are bringing the concept of a reusable components, and this is a big thing, right? So this is really reducing the time to the market. So earlier, our infrastructure was becoming a big roadblock, wherein the product was ready but the infrastructure was not ready to support it. But right now, with infrastructure as a code, you can scale it instantaneously, and you can reuse the kind of code which you're writing with reusable components. And one of the very key features is the security, right? So security is getting integrated directly into the infrastructure with this implementation. Having said that, right, I just wanted to put some more stats from Forrester report, wherein to collaborate with the kind of advantages which the people are getting once they start integrating infrastructure as a code right now. This, I'm not just going to read through it, but this is just a benchline of how people are looking at the advantages of it. So the next big thing is the microservices, right? So as I said, right, so the process changed, the thought, the tools changed, the technology changed. We are also talking about an architectural change here, right? So we had monolithic kind of applications which were tightly coupled, right? That worked very well for quite a long time. That is when we started looking at IT agility, business agility, right? So we wanted to be agile with the kind of requirements which was changing with the business, right? So we want to bring in concept of a service-oriented architecture, which was a lot more loosely coupled and gave a lot more flexibility in the way we were actually implementing the products, right? So service-oriented architecture really helped us quite a bit, but now we are not even satisfied with that. We want to be completely decoupled. We need to have a product developed which is self-sufficient. It can be hosted independently of all other things, but still can easily talk to all other different services, right? So that is where we are having a completely decoupled microservices kind of an implementation. I'm going to talk about how microservices is going to help us with other things, but I just want to give a brief about how infrastructure is evolving, what kind of transformation we are bringing with it. The next big thing which I want to talk about is the containerization, right? So containerization has blown up the whole thing. This has been a game changer. And one of the things which I want to specify is that Docker is not container, right? Container is a concept, and there are a lot of players in that particular area. We have Kubernetes, which is doing a very good thing right now. We have Ranchers, we have Mesosphere. There are quite a lot of things. And it is not only the container, right? We have container orchestrations, we have container engines, we have mini OSs. So there are quite a lot of development and work which are happening in the container area. So let me take a very simple example, right? So Google had Kubernetes, I think, for a decade right now, which they were using within their organization. And they are now coming up with standards as to how we can develop containers, how different containers can interact with each other. What are the kind of standards we are going to follow with it? So if you look at a Docker, right, Docker really helped us in scaling. But what Kubernetes does even better is that, let's say that we have 5 instances of a container and one of them fails, Kubernetes identifies that, monitors automatically, and starts a new instance without any manual intervention. So Docker brought in a lot of things, but Kubernetes is growing at a rapid pace. There are a lot more new features which are coming as we are speaking now. So there's a lot of evolution which is happening within the containerization, and this is going to become a very big thing. So I'm going to take a few examples of microservices and containerization in the next slides, which I'm going to talk about. Yeah, so I just talked about the infrastructure transformation which is happening right now, right? So I want to shift gears wherein why this change is happening, like how it is going to affect and where we are going with this. So if you look at the latest trends which are happening, right? So people are definitely going towards cloud, right? So cloud is going to be the place wherein people are going to develop, people are going to integrate, people are going to deploy, people are going to evolve within the cloud. So that is where cloud is a place where most of the things are happening, right? So people are moving towards cloud native, right? Cloud native applications is what is the real trend right now. So what is cloud native applications? So cloud native applications basic purpose is to build for the cloud model. These applications which are built and deployed, right, are done in a rapid cadence by very small and dedicated feature teams, right? That is the full stack developers which we are talking about. And these platforms, right, cloud native applications and platforms offers easy scalability, hardware decoupling, which is a very, very important thing to achieve agility, resilience, and portability. So this is how the industry is evolving, right? So we are, from a process point of view, we are bringing DevOps. From a delivery point of view, we are making it automated by bringing continuous delivery. From a services oriented, we are at microservices. Containers is the way in which we are going to deliver the products into different environment, right? So this is how we are going. So what are the kind of advantages we are getting from this? And just to give a stats of it, that globally, I think around 65% of the enterprises have started building their application strategy and roadmap on cloud platforms. This is a big number which we are talking about. And the stat says that by 2020, it is expected to double virtually. So that's the kind of growth we are looking at with the cloud native applications. And these cloud native applications are going to bring in native advantages to us, which are we can auto provision the things. Scaling is made configurable and automated, wherein we can scale both horizontally and vertically. We have highest availability, right? So we have these concepts of high availability, wherein we are auto monitoring the things, and we can take actions to the problems which we are facing. Like if, like the example I said, wherein one of the servers failed, we can automatically reboot a new one. So we can have different models for that. We are drastically improving the performance, right? So we can have auto scaling and auto performance configuration which can be set, wherein when we have different high loads, the performance of the application doesn't downsize. We can use the cloud features to keep the performance at a static level. We can take the advantage of the caching and the monitoring, which also comes with the cloud native implementation. So having talked about the cloud native application, right? So one of the biggest implementers of cloud native is the pivotal cloud Foundry. So it is very important that we understand what is the new trends which are coming, how the things are evolving, right? So PCF, or the Pivotal Cloud Foundry, is basically a combination of Cloud Foundry and the Spring, right? So what is Cloud Foundry? Cloud Foundry is a industry standard, right, for the open source cloud application. So we are now talking about a open source kind of a cloud implementation or a framework which is going to help us for developing and deploying enterprise cloud applications. And the biggest advantage what we get is it automates, it can scale and manage cloud apps throughout their life cycle. So we are talking about how we are bringing the DevOps implementation into the cloud in a native way. Applications can be written in just about virtually any language and can be deployed in container images on any infrastructure. So that's the biggest advantages which you're going to get by implementing within a pivotal cloud foundry. And this is something like we are going to have a complete DevOps in cloud. That is where we are saying that we are going to have source control, we are going to have the project planning embedded into it, we are going to have the continuous integration integrated with it, we are going to have the monitoring embedded with that, we are going to have the log management system, and also a feedback system wherein we can take reactive and proactive measures for the changes which we are seeing. So that's the kind of changes which the industry is looking and going towards. So it's very so what it also provides with the features which I just talked about, like once you have deployed, you need to manage for it, right? So you get the access of roles and policy. You can easily get the metrics of the live system as it is right now. We have a log aggregator. We can check the health of the servers, right? We can get the health management system, security and isolation. We can have the blue-green deployment done, and scaling, which is a very, very important feature of how we are going to deploy the things in the environments which we are looking at. So having said that, right, so we talked about cloud native, we talked about pivotal cloud foundry. So all of these things, one of the things which I need to just stress once more time is that security is a very, very big factor in all these things. We need lot of times people try to bring security only at the end of the uh, life cycle, but it is very imperative that we start thinking about security from the requirements phase and have it monitored throughout the life system. This is a schematic representation of how we can work with the security features, and this works wonderfully well with both cloud, on-premise, or a hybrid kind of implementation. DevSecOps is a word which is used for it, but it basically means that you need to start developing a secure DevOps, right? So there are different ways, different tools in which you can try to bring in. I've worked with Guntle, which is a BDD approach to how we can embed the security into the infrastructure, and all the major configuration tools like Chef, Puppet, Ansible have the compliance modules which can be embedded to add more security and auditing into the system. So these are the kind of considerations which we need to take in when we start embedding the security also into this part of it. So let me just talk about a quick success story. I think I'm running out of time, so I'll just try to keep it simple. So here we are talking about an instance wherein one of our organization again wanted to go for a modernization part of it. They had a legacy application which was running for quite a long time and with pretty old technology which was in, and they were getting beaten left and right by their competitors, and the organization took a decision that it's high time that they have to change, right? They need to become modern, they have to compete with their competitors. So they came to us and said, can you help us with that? So that is when we came up with this concepts, which is again being proposed by Docker also right now as one of their key features, called the modernized legacy applications, wherein we took we took the modernization in a step-by-step manner, wherein we didn't want to change drastically at the start, right? We don't want to disrupt the business, which is the core for the organization. So we started with a lift and shift approach, wherein the application which was residing within their virtual machines, we converted that into a container using the Docker, and uploaded that Docker container into the cloud. So now what we did was, without making any major changes, we made some minor changes so that it was compatible with it. We were able to move the legacy application into the cloud without making any major changes. So now that legacy application with the same features, the same problems which it had, but was taking all the advantages what it had with the cloud. So then once we were stable in the cloud infrastructure, that is when we started modernizing with the microservices. So we went with the DDD approach, wherein we looked at the business, we started to peel off their business into different services. So the monolith became a microservices right now, and we started by taking small steps, right? We can't make major changes. So we looked at the dependencies within the organization, what could be picked, what couldn't be picked, what are the different approaches we were trying to take with it, and we also make a conscious decision that all new the features and requirements which are coming in is going to go with the cloud native and the microservices approach for it. Once we were able to, I think we were able to successfully implement 60% of the legacy product out into microservices. Then we felt, okay, now we are at a stage where we can start thinking about cloud native. So that is when the organization was able to invest big time into a cloud native application, which was a leader with all its competitors. So it took some time, but it was undisruptive, and it was a smooth way in which a legacy application got modernized. So that's one of the success stories which you have with implementing it, and that definitely got them speed to the market, and quality was tremendously improved by implementing automated testing, all the security checks which had to be integrated with that, with the latest tools and technology, and that really increased the number of customers who got enrolled with them. The customer satisfaction rate increased tremendously. So having said that, I would like to push back to Ranjit, who will be talking about Nous.
Hey, thanks a lot, Uttam. That was a really insightful, interesting, and informative session on the cultural and infrastructure aspects of DevOps. Thanks for that, Uttam. So moving on, I would just like to give you a brief introduction of the company Nous Infosystems. So Nous Infosystems is a CMMI Level 5 information technology firm with over 20 years of experience. Our global offices are spread across the US, California, New Jersey, In the Europe, we are present in UK, Germany, in the Middle East, and India. Our development centers are based out of India, although we do have a nearshore delivery capability in New Jersey as well. Uh, we have 1,000 plus technology consultants who are spread across a variety of technologies. A lot of customers can actually testify to our expertise. And in terms of domain focus, largely we do focus on banking, financial services, insurance, retail, travel, logistics, healthcare, and education. In terms of the centers of competency, we have developed these competencies around digital transformation, DevOps, enterprise mobility, big data, business intelligence analytics, user experience design, open source, cloud, CRM, you name it, we have it. So we do have the 360 of technology, as it were. And what we do in these centers of competency is we incubate and develop solution accelerators that accelerates the life cycle of these applications. And also we have extremely skilled resources who can be rapidly deployed, and enterprises gain agile access to these resources. So moving on, at this point in time, we have the Q&A. So I did see, a couple of questions from the audience since I had mentioned it in the beginning. So I'm just going to take these couple of questions and wind up. So Uttam, somebody in the question bar is telling us, let me see. So, okay, so they're saying, okay, DevOps doesn't support our legacy infrastructure. So why even adopt DevOps, Uttam?
No, I understand why they are saying that. I think many of them have this misconception that DevOps is being only adopted with new companies which are coming up, or the people with the latest technologies, and not with the legacy application. And I totally disagree with them. And we have really helped organizations with legacy applications running in COBOL, running in C++, and trying to bring them into a modern technology way. I understand that, because like I explained in my previous success stories and the other use cases, it's going to take time. There are going to be challenges, but it's very important that we go through the challenges and look at the way in which we can achieve the solutions for it. Because if you're hesitant to go the next step or bring in the change within your organization, you're going to get eaten up by your competitors, right? So I know you can survive maybe because of your strengths for quite some time, but with the kind of changes which we are seeing in the industry, there's no option for you guys. It's like we have to start modernization. We need to start bringing new concepts. It's going to take time, so we need to start taking the advantages of the new technologies like microservices. We need to start taking advantages of a lift and shift kind of implementation for cloud advantages. Either way around, we need to start thinking in a different way. So every challenge has a solution, so we can talk about it and see how best we can solve it.
Okay. So yeah, that kind of, I hope that answered the question from the audience. So the very last question that I see here, somebody says, I see a lot of DevOps initiatives failing in the market. So what are the possible reasons, Uttam?
Yeah, this is one of the things which I've been discussing with many people, that and also we get called up saying that two consultants have already come and tried to implement DevOps in our organization and still fail. And what can you do different, right? So how do you try to solve this kind of a problem? So I would say that most of the time, right, when we are talking about these kind of real challenges, it needs to be taken at multiple levels. So few of the things which I've seen in organizations which really make changes, we need to empower the people who wants to bring in this change. We want to educate the people who are resisting the change by making them understand why it is imperative that they have to change, and give them the comfort level by training them, updating their skill set to make them feel they're not going to get redundant, but they're going to be the part of the change which we are talking about. And again, I'm saying that this is a very important thing which normally fails in a lot of organization. People are given KRAs, right? They are measured on the kind of work they're doing, and the kind of measurements or the KRS which are being provided to them doesn't match up with the DevOps work, right? So normally people see like DevOps is an extra work. Like if you start doing TDD, they feel, okay, I can finish this feature implementation in 30 minutes. If I put a TDD, it will take me 45 minutes. So this 15 minutes is extra work and I'm getting delayed, right? So you need to plan the things in such a way that you motivate them, you empower them, you incentivize the people, so that I'm pretty sure with these kind of changes which we have seen, people do change and we can make a difference.
Okay. So that, I hope that kind of answered the question from the audience. So I guess, folks, we've completely run out of time. I once again thank you all for having taken the time from your busy schedule to attend this webinar. And I hope you found this information from the webinar very interesting. You can possibly reach us, post this webinar. You can write to us at info@nousinfo.com, or you can very well log on to the website, nousinfosystems.com. And if you want to talk to us, do drop an inquiry on the website and we will get back to you as soon as possible. You can follow us on social media as well. So until next time, I would kind of take leave, and I wish you all a good day, good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are. And I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.